Hi, I'm Jeffrey, and right now we are going to look at the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, if you're familiar with the Bible, then you know that it falls into two large sections. There's the Old Testament, which looks at the relationship between ancient Israel and their God. And then there's the New Testament, which follows the life and teachings of Jesus and some of his close followers thereafter. Now, if you read through the Bible, you find the number 12 showing up over and over again. And that number was very important to the nation of Israel because they saw their nation as a collection of 12 large families called tribes. And these tribes show up over and over again throughout the Bible. So let's get a high-level overview of the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, the 12 tribes of Israel come from 12 patriarchs. Israel was not just the name of the nation, but it was also the name of Jacob, who was the father of the entire nation of Israel. And so the 12 tribes of Israel come from the names of the 12 sons of Israel, or the 12 patriarchs. Now you can find this list of Jacob's sons several times in Genesis. You can read some of the stories of how they were born in chapters 29 and 30. In chapter 35, you get a very succinct summary of the children of Israel. And then in chapters 48 and 49, you see some of the prophetic blessings that Jacob gives to his sons. But for now, what we want to do is just get a high-level overview of who these people are. There was a lot of drama in the original family of Israel. So these 12 sons actually come from 4 different mothers. You have 6 sons coming from the mother Leah. And Leah was Jacob's first wife, but not his favorite. That goes to Rachel. Rachel was his second wife and the one that he loved the most. So we have 6 sons of Leah: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun. Jacob had 2 concubines as well. These were the servants of Leah and Rachel. They wanted to have more children, and so they had more children in those days through these concubine mothers. So you have Bilhah, which is where Dan and Naphtali come from, and Zilpah, which is where Gad and Asher come from. Then Rachel has some children of her own. Joseph, that's the very famous one with that colorful coat. And Joseph has 2 sons of his own, Manasseh and Ephraim. And then we have Benjamin, who is the youngest of the original 12. These men all had families, and at the end of the book of Genesis, we see all of them journeying to the land of Egypt to avoid a famine. And in Egypt, over the course of 400 years, so the story of Genesis and Exodus goes, these 12 families grow and multiply into 12 tribes, and they become a mighty nation with these 12 families and clans that make them up. Now, in the book of Exodus, we find everyone in Egypt, and then they start making their journey from Egypt to the land that God promised to Jacob's grandfather, Abraham. And on the way to them actually getting those territories, we see a few tribes emerge as more significant. Those tribes are Levi, Judah, and Ephraim. Now, Levi is super important to understanding the rest of what's going on in the Old Testament. This is the tribe that Moses comes from. And there's this moment, a rather famous Bible story, when Moses goes up the mountain to meet with God, and the rest of the nation is down at the foot of the mountain, and they make a golden calf and start worshiping that. Well, Moses isn't very happy about that. He says, who is for the Lord here? And only the tribe of Levi responds with loyalty for the God of Israel. And so Levi is loyal when the rest of Israel is worshiping this golden calf, and they are blessed for that loyalty to God. Similarly, later on, Moses sends one representative from each tribe into the promised land to explore and spy out the land. the spies come back, and of the 12 spies, only 2 give a positive report. Only 2 of them believe that the people of Israel will be protected by God as they go into the promised land. One of those 2 is Caleb, and he represents the tribe of Judah. Caleb is loyal to God and to Moses. The rest of the nation wants to kill Moses and his brother Aaron, who is the high priest, the tribe of Levi, and go back to Egypt. Caleb resists this, and he is blessed. He lives to see the promised land, which, if you are familiar with the book of Numbers, you know that most people die out in the wilderness from Caleb's generation. There's another exception to this rule, and that's the representative from Ephraim, Joshua. Joshua is a very famous Bible character. Not only is he loyal to Moses during this incident, but he has been serving Moses his entire life from when he was just a young person. And God and Moses select Joshua to lead the people into the promised land. And you can read all about that in the book that holds Joshua's name. The particular commission, you can read that episode, though, in Deuteronomy chapter 31. Now, when we get to the book of Joshua, we see the 12 tribes getting 12 territories. And this is where things get kind of interesting. So Judah, Benjamin, Ephraim, Issachar, Zebulun, Naphtali, Asher, Simeon, and Dan are all given territories west of the Jordan River, in the promised land proper, in the land of Canaan. Before that happens, 3 tribes ask for the land that lies to the east of the Jordan River. So it's not necessarily in the promised land proper, if you will. It's not in the land of Canaan. It's just across the river on the other side. And Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh ask Moses if they can just inherit that land. Moses says yes. And so that's something that we see happening in the book of Deuteronomy, and then also it gets solidified in the book of Joshua. A few caveats to this story. One is that the tribe of Dan doesn't like the land that Joshua gives them, and so later on in the book of Judges, in chapter 18, they abandon that land and move north and capture a new territory for their own. And then also, the tribe of Manasseh ends up straddling the river. So they're given land on the east of the Jordan River by Moses, and then Joshua gives them more land on the west side in the land of Canaan. You can read about that in Joshua 22:7. Now, you'll notice that when I list this list of territories, there's no Joseph and there's no Levi. Well, there's no Joseph because Joseph, being the firstborn of Israel's second wife, he inherited the blessing that was forfeited by Reuben. That is another story, and it's not a very good one. But Reuben forfeits his blessing, Joseph gets the birthright. And so Joseph gets a double portion. And so that's why we see not just a tribe of Joseph, but both of Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, have territories in the promised land. So we see Joseph represented, but what about Levi? Well, Levi gets a special inheritance. Instead of inheriting a large territory of land, they are given something even more important. The responsibility for caring for God's temple and maintaining Israel's worship. The Levites are responsible for sacrifices. The Levites are responsible for conducting feasts. The tribe of Levi has a pivotal role in the Old Testament, and it's crucial for helping the people of Israel continue to be loyal to God, just as Levi was during the golden calf incident. Well, if they don't have land, then how are they going to feed themselves? Well, that's provided for in Moses' law. The Levites, and specifically the priests who are putting all their time into taking care of the temple, they live off of offerings that the people provide to them. So they get a portion of sacrifices, and when the people of Israel are giving tithes and donating, that's where the tribe of Levi gets their sustenance from. Now, When we fast forward a bit in the Old Testament, we start seeing these 12 tribes forming a nation, a united monarchy. We see a little bit of that under the Benjaminite Saul, but things really start coming together under the famous King David. So King David, who's from the tribe of Judah, unites the 12 tribes into one kingdom, and he establishes the political and religious capital in the town of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a city in the territory of Judah. He commissions the Temple of God at Jerusalem, so that's the main headquarters for the tribe of Levi as well. And then God makes a special covenant. He joins houses with David and says that there will be a son of David on the throne in God's kingdom forever. So, of course, the Christians have a pretty strong idea as to who that person will be, and we say that very expressly in just a little bit. But after things are going so well with David, David's son Solomon does not remain as loyal to God. And so the nation splits 2 generations later. And we see the 12 tribes of Israel fracturing into 2 different kingdoms. One is called Israel, sometimes it's called Samaria or Ephraim, or just the northern kingdom. And so they have a new king, Jeroboam, that's from the tribe of Ephraim, and a new capital, Samaria, a new religion. They eventually fall to the Assyrians. You can read about that in 2 Kings chapter 17. And then the southern kingdom just goes by Judah. That's the strongest tribe there. They keep Benjamin from the outset. They keep Levi because the new religion in Israel doesn't rely on Levitical priests. And so the people of Levi tend to just move to Judah and serve in the religion that is actually supporting them. However, and then other families from other tribes eventually defect back to Judah under the oversight of some of their good kings. Later on, though, Judah eventually loses their way. They are not loyal to God, they don't listen to his prophets, and they fall to the empire of Babylon. You can read about that at the end of 2 Chronicles. You can read the entire story of how this fracture happens in 1 Kings 11 through 12. Now let's fast forward to the New Testament, when we start seeing the person of Jesus showing up. Now when Jesus arrives, he announces a new kingdom. And a very interesting thing that he does when he announces that new kingdom is he selects his own set of 12 people to begin this new movement. And these 12 are known as the 12 apostles. They represent the beginning of a new Israel that we see explained and unfolding in the rest of the New Testament. And there's some really interesting things that are happening here. So Jesus is the Messiah, the heir of David. And so the promises that God made to David in Judah, the Christians believe apply to Jesus. Jesus is that chosen one that is anointed by God to bring about his kingdom. We find out in the beginning of Luke's gospel that Jesus is related to Aaron, who was a Levite. And later on in the New Testament, we find that Jesus is referred to as the high priest of the Christian faith. So, not only do we find Jesus pulling in the things that were important from the tribe of Judah, but we also see Jesus pulling in things that were important from the tribe of Levi. Not so strong of a connection as the other two, but Jesus in Hebrew actually is Joshua, who was the most significant member of the tribe of Ephraim in the Bible. So that's a pretty cool piece of trivia to bring into this. And then later on, Jesus' followers are talking about the church, the people that are following Jesus, as this new Israel. Paul, who is an apostle, calls those in Christ the Israel of God. He says that if you have faith, then you are a child of Abraham, a true child of Abraham, which is very, very interesting. There is this spiritual Israel that is open to people that aren't genetically Jewish. Peter talks about the church, that's a mix of both Jews and non-Jews, as a holy nation, of royal priests. See, we have royal, which calls back to Judah. We have priests, which calls back to Levi. But Peter's talking to people who aren't necessarily members of either of those tribes, or even necessarily Jewish. But he says that in Christ, in this new kingdom, in this new Israel, everyone is holy. Everyone is a member of this royal priesthood. And so we see these 12 tribes of Israel start to come together into Jesus' new kingdom. Jesus is taking a lot of things that the people of his time, the Jewish people of his time, would have already known from the Old Testament. This was already how people were thinking about a nation that belonged to God. And Jesus is saying, this isn't just about genes. This isn't just about bloodlines. Jesus is making a new Israel, a new people of God, in which everyone can participate in enjoying and worshiping God. That's a high-level overview of the 12 tribes of Israel and why they're significant in both the Old Testament and the New Testament. Now, if you want to know more about the history of Israel and the books of the Bible that tell this story, you should check out my book. It's called The Beginner's Guide to the Bible, and it'll walk you through where the Bible came from, what it's for, and how all those individual books of the Bible fit together. I used Logos Bible software to do the research that went into this, and if you'd like to know what it's like to use that, I have a review that you should check out. I can link to that in the description here. And then, of course, if you want to see more videos like this, you should subscribe to this channel. That way I can notify you just as soon as the next one goes live. Again, I'm Jeffrey with Overview Bible. I hope this was helpful. Thank you for watching.